If I'm fighting for Kennedy, right,
Yeah.
and I want Kennedy to be allowed, I'll also fight for other films to be allowed. The films should be allowed. I have a problem with that film. I might think the director is an opportunist, whatever it is. It's them. I think it doesn't mean they can't make a film. Everybody and every kind of film should be allowed to make. कोई आदमी जो है ऊपर किसी को खुश करने के लिए बना रहा है तो बनाने दो भाई, तुम्हें क्यों दिक्कत हो रही है?
I will never stand for any kind of censorship in India. If a movie is to be released and one section of the audience believes that it provides a reflection of the harsh truths of our society and the other believes it's propaganda, I believe it should be allowed to exist and be ignored or deciphered by the Indian public. The Kerala Story 2 has gone through an absolute whirlwind of a journey just in the span of 48 hours. Prior to its release, the Kerala High Court, owing to several petitions, stayed its release, stating that the makers did not take into account the political and social harmony that this movie may adversely affect. The movie is especially being called out for its movie title and how it specifically targets Kerala, just like the first film, describing the state and the cases of forced conversion to Islam as a ticking time bomb. The makers defended the film by stating that the key words "goes beyond" in the title highlight the fact that the movie does not specifically only focus on Kerala but talks about the different cases of forced conversion across states. The Kerala High Court had stayed the movie's release by 15 days, only for it to swiftly change and given a green light by the evening yesterday. When I was notified on the same, I watched the evening show and I have a lot of thoughts to share with you. You know, whenever there is a movie that is politically charged, especially when it deals with religion, the comment section of the review is extremely quick to pigeonhole me in a political side based on whether I like or dislike a movie. This is the nature of the game, so let's talk about the film. The first movie, directed by Sudipto Sen, despite focusing on a real person story, personally for me, was extremely poorly acted, visually looked like it was shot straight out of a tin can. It went on to win a national award for cinematography, by the way. Exaggerated statistics for political mileage and just in general felt to me more catered towards dividing people of this country and portray Kerala as a failed state. The second film, directed this time by Kamakhya Narayan Singh, focuses on 3 cases of forced conversion with Hindu girls that happened in Kerala, Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan. The screenplay sheds light on how they are coerced into marriage, how the women justify the union to their parents, and finally how the rosy picture of their marriages come crashing down very soon. Here's me telling you the good and bad aspects of the film so that you guys can ultimately decide whether to watch the Kerala Story 2 in theaters or not. The good. Conviction in acting performances and circumstances. The only upgrade that I noticed with this movie compared to the first film was that it visually captures the personal stories of the women in a manner that is at least visually looking like a professional movie. The storylines, while mostly confined in the claustrophobic settings of the houses in which the women are captured, at least through the initial moments of the film, actually seem like stories set in Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan. While there are inconsistent and some terrible performances dispersed throughout the film, I thought about some of the actors in this movie and what compels them to do such terrible material on the big screen. Of course, the makers of movies like this that not only focus on the extremist elements that should be rightfully called out, but go out of their way to label every person of the religion as evil, will cast actors who are relatively new and are waiting for their big break in the industry. I can imagine several people from the ensemble cast just giddy with joy that they are even getting a theatrical release in this environment. When one is desperate for work, the political and social ramifications of a film become secondary because the ability to say no is a luxury. So I have absolutely zero judgment on the actors that feature in this project, some of whom are really talented. I must especially commend Aditi Bhatia, who plays the role of Divija. She portrays a 16-year-old girl who loves to dance and make reels. She features in the subplot of this movie that is the most convincing, for it portrays the impressionable and rebellious mind that teenagers have and how easily one can be manipulated. Everything for them at that stage of their life feels like the end of the world. Every reprimanding lecture by the parent feels oppressive. An escape in the form of a peer, a shoulder to cry on, is imagined to be ideal. An escape from what is deemed as oppressive, only for the mirage to disappear and one to realize that it's far too late. Her portrayal of a girl who just wants to pursue her passion of dance seemed the most convincing to me, an immersive part of an otherwise poorly written film, also because of the vile and disgusting portrayal by Yuktam Khosla, who plays her husband. This is the subplot that from manipulation, gaslighting and abuse actually could have been its own movie and be largely effective, for it portrayed the case of grooming and brainwashing minors and how the victim doesn't know any better. The rest of the film, however, has an array of issues that need to be expanded upon. The underwhelming aspects, acting and stereotypes. The most infuriating portrayal in this movie has to be of the Malayali Surekha. She is presented as this independent, bright and educated individual who has been raised well. The reason why we know this is an authentic Malayali portrayal is that most of the Hindi dialogues have dispersed keywords like mone, acha, appa and sari. To truly make us feel like the makers have done their research. They also have dosa and chutney in the morning too. The portrayal of this character and why she feels drawn towards her romantic interest absolutely negates her being bright in any way. The conversations of manipulation are absolutely cringeworthy. The man stating lines like, "Your hair is just not beautiful, it's poetry." And the clincher, he is already married and promises to leave his first wife, but evades this question every step of the way. The girl, who is otherwise so bright, even moves in with him, knowing that he is still married to his first wife. All the red flags are clearly in front of her, but she argues with Twitter talking points with her parents about Islamophobia, us versus them, secularism is a joke jargon that really takes the shape of a subplot being an amalgamation of WhatsApp forwards that are not convincing. The dialogues to prove us the authenticity of other parts of India are as convincing as Batti Gul Meter Chalu telling us that the movie is set in Uttarakhand with everyone saying Bal. Similarly, the Rajasthanis keep on saying Bawdi ho gayi hai ke? Even though an actor like Aishwarya Ojha as Neha tries her best, I realize that the fundamental flaw of this movie is not entirely its performances or stereotypes, but it's the inferior writing. Speaking of which, inferior storytelling and imagery. I can't believe I'm saying this. The reason why, from a storytelling perspective, the first film is more impactful in its messaging than this one is because the process of manipulation by extremists for their own vested interests is a significant part of the first half of the film. You see the nature of the hostel mate and how she slowly indoctrinates her batchmates, introduces her to her male friends, and creates fake scenarios for the women to doubt their own beliefs. Here, however, we are already introduced to couples being madly in love. Hence, the aspect of how one gets convinced of conversion, how one gets manipulated or gaslit, is never really established. It's assumed it's already done from the get-go, making several of the scenarios half-baked. The film literally transitions from trapping the women to the second half, which is just torture, where the women are shown getting abused in every scene. Convincing someone through fake crying, self-harm and slapping oneself are extremely poorly acted, and this is not a strong enough pivot to convince us that the women are willing to change their life upside down. The film also categorically uses imagery to make its point not only about extremist savages, but about an entire religion. It wants to not make you aware of the problems that exist around you. It wants to tell you that every individual who is a Muslim and what they represent is a problem. Scenes of abuse or a victim being manipulated are portrayed with the backdrop of Taj Mahal, a symbol that globally is lauded and a beautiful wonder of the world, is specifically placed in the backdrop of abuse. The acts of violence are not the only things that are presented through evil background music, but the nature in which Muslims worship, the namaz or even the establishment of the dargah are presented with the lens of everything evil. The beef force feeding sequence also is not necessary to the plot, but shoehorned in to make a point for social media engagement. The intention is not that elements are problematic, but that everyone associated with Islam is evil, not only in the state of Kerala, but everywhere in India. Illogical and one note. The point where the first film or even a movie like The Diplomat were convincing in the struggles that women faced in captivity was that they were placed in locations where it was absolutely impossible to connect or contact an ally who could aid them. When one is in a location tough to decipher in the badlands of Afghanistan and is being regularly abused, one understands the plight and empathizes with their circumstances because they are so cut away from the real world. Here, however, when reality sets in for the women that the person that they fell in love with is an evil monster, they still have access to their phones to call for help, but ignore that option and still partake in wanting to reason with their partner. This may be a case of Stockholm Syndrome, but it is very poorly etched out. The The most frustrating subplot is with the Malayali girl who accepts the first wife residing in the same house, arguing with her, and one couldn't help but wonder why she is not calling her parents for help. There are cases where even the minor girl gets to know about the abuse in the family, but rather than calling the parents, she deems it fit to shoot reels in the same house, knowing very well she will be violently dealt with for the same. There are several instances where the women could have easily found ways to contact friends and family, but they leave it to the point where it's too late. The reason why I believe the movie and its intention does reach muddy waters is that in this world that the makers create, there is not even a sliver of humanity in any Muslim in the frame. All are evil and all are vowing to make India an Islamic state in 25 years and impose Sharia law. A character says this dialogue with an Indian map behind him that is entirely green. The acts of abuse are carried out and the wailings and cries of women fall on deaf ears as women of the neighborhood just nudge and carry on with their lives as if it's normal. The reason why films and storytelling is effective is because there is nuance. For example, a Telugu movie like Girlfriend that gets accused of showing all men as evil still have characters like the teacher and the male lead's best friend that try to bring some sense to him that he is abusing his girlfriend. A brilliant and effective movie like Haq, while portraying the acts of abuse of Imran Hashmi, still have a supportive father figure that assists his daughter in every court proceeding, despite the odds stacked against them. In The Diplomat, even though it is a story set outside of India, it still does have a Kumud Mishra playing the role of an advocate who has some humanity, who does stand for what is right, versus the case here where every single Muslim in the film is vowing to convert or kill you. The acts of extremism in religion in a movie like The Diplomat or even Haq are still effective and get its point across without attempting to brainwash the audience against an entire community. And I think it's this lack of nuance that I believe makes me conclude that the Kerala Story 2 is nothing but a lazy franchise installment, the only cash cow for Vipul Shah's failed career as a producer currently, that I believe has been made with intentions that are dubious rather than earnest. And that was a video, guys. Write down in the comments below what you thought about Kerala Story 2. Please don't forget to follow me on Instagram. The handle's right in front of you. Follow me at JammyPants4. Also, please support us by smashing the like button and subscribing to our channel for weekly content ahead. Thank you for watching.